All right, so I'm going to kick us off here. My name is Nada Ahmed. I'm the Executive Director at Eskolta School of Research and Design. Super excited to have everybody here today. We're very excited to share our alumni study with everyone today. And so our goal today, before we kind of kick off, first is just to make sure that everybody leaves the session today with a better understanding of how students experience school and a broader sense of what success in schools looks like. So we're hoping everybody leaves the session really thinking about how to center young people as experts in these conversations. I just want to share some housekeeping today. Feel free to use the chat as we go through the presentation. We want to engage with you there. We might not be able to answer all the questions during the presentation, but we hope to have time at the end for you to engage with our presenters and panelists. So today you'll hear from our researchers, and a big shout out to them, Anelfi Maria, Ali Holstein, and Alicia Wolcott. So a big shout out to them. And you'll also hear from, we're really excited, we have alumni featured in our video. We have a panel of transfer school alumni and educators who will give you a fuller introduction, to later as we continue. I'm honored and I'm excited to turn over the presentation now to Makila Myers, Eskolta's Director of Research and Policy. Makila, it's all yours.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. My name is Makila Myers. I'm excited to be here this afternoon. Eskolta School of Research and Design is a nonprofit organization of educators, designers, and researchers committed to improving educational and social emotional outcomes for historically underserved students. Through research and strategic design, our team helps schools process challenges that their community faces and design solutions that promote equity and disrupt systems of oppression, center student voice and agency, and create greater opportunities for student success. We partner with alternative and traditional high schools. In New York City, there are more than 50 alternative schools known here as transfer schools. They are designed to serve students who are typically 16 and older who have been underserved. They are not all the same, but they are typically small in size and offer personalized learning environments. Many of them partner with community-based organizations to offer paid internships, provide student support services, as well as give access to college, career exploration, and preparation activities. Eskolta has been doing this work for quite some time in New York City and found that solely looking at quantitative data did not tell the full story of what we were seeing happening in transfer schools. We wanted to be intentional about speaking with transfer school students and understanding their experiences. We wanted to better understand the practices and policies that contribute to both their academic progress and post-secondary success. The research we will share today expands on what we already know about transfer schools by offering a new long-term perspective from those who know transfer schools and their impact best, alumni. We also analyzed citywide data. We followed a longitudinal cohort that was expected to graduate in 2015, and a snapshot of students enrolled in 2018-2019 to better understand the experiences of underserved students in New York City. We tracked one group of students through all their years enrolled, sometimes up to 8 years. We want to start today by having some alumni introduce you to the findings of the report. In these first videos, we hear about what brought them to transfer schools and some of their experiences before and after transferring.
Seventh grade, I was homeless. My mom was addicted to drugs, never met my dad.
I was 10 years old, taking care of like 5 kids.
I came from the Dominican Republic. I didn't know the English language.
I have dyslexia, as well as English is my second language. So I would get pulled out of classes.
I was in 5th grade, and then they realized I actually didn't finish the 4th grade. I remember vividly, they came upstairs and they're like, actually, she has to go back downstairs. So I was picked up midway through the day and they're like, this is your new class. And no one really explained to me why I was moving classes.
This high school that I went to was in a really, really terrible neighborhood. Like gun violence was almost every day.
My first high school had metal detectors, and it felt really uncomfortable being patted the way I was every morning. It was so invasive constantly, just to get to school.
I was intimidated to go to school from just the police officers.
We would be in these common spaces and fights would break out. So you'd get arrested if you got into a fight with no context.
I'm used to having like teachers that are predominantly white, and they're just like, well, I get paid whether you do the work or not. So, I mean, I don't care.
Classrooms were too big. If you didn't know something, you just had to figure it out or ask somebody else and see if they knew something. If they didn't know, then y'all both didn't know. And it was just, you had to just basically fend for yourself.
So it made us kind of step back and be like, oh, okay. Like, they just gonna let us do whatever we want.
You're just thrown textbooks or like a little Chromebook and you're told to go on Google Classroom and do the work, and then that's it.
It's just pass or fail.
The classes were an hour and a half long. The teachers didn't know my name.
I barely met with my guidance counselor. I don't even think she knew my name.
I didn't know my counselors. I didn't know the principal of those schools.
I mean, I was doing terrible. My grades were low.
I was always cutting.
Some days I would wake up and I just didn't want to go to school because I'm struggling. I gotta fight for answers. I gotta fight for help. Some days I just woke up and I just didn't go.
There was even times that I would cut school, go to the football field and climb over the fence just to smoke. And nobody ever found me.
Transfer school, I felt like connected to these people, and like this is my safety, like these people care for me.
You're definitely heard and you're seen.
People in regular school, they don't really love and care for you like how they did in that school.
In Liberation, I was homeless, and I was never bothered. Everybody treated me like I had a bed to sleep at night and food in my stomach.
I got really sick for a while and I couldn't keep on going to school because of like my mental health reasons. The social worker at my school got a professor to come to my house, and I was able to still get credits while transitioning back to school. There's people that support you and want to make sure you're okay.
The first day I got there was like this lady like just sitting in the middle like of the hallway as soon as I walked out the elevator. Come to find out it was the principal. But she sounded like so kind and so nice.
The school was so small that everybody in there knew each other, from school safety to the janitor to principal, vice principal. And it was interesting just to see everybody walk by and address them by their names.
A lot of the classes had 2 teachers in the classroom. So it was a lot more help to like understand what's going on in regular schools.
They motivate you to want to be successful.
We didn't have Student of the Month, and I was like, I think we should start this. I think people would really love it, and like just carried through. And we got to go see a basketball game, we got gift cards, and people were aiming to become Student of the Month.
We had like yearly trips. If you did well, everything that we did that was good was an accomplishment for us.
Also, they had like animals there.
And I was like, yo, this school's amazing.
Like they would have like pet snakes and like a turtle and like hamsters and rats all over the place. Not like bad rats, but like pet rats.
Every so often, Miss Leon would order cater food. So I would have like fresh chicken tenders, lasagna, baked mac and cheese, collard greens.
We had like a pantry. We could get like 10 items per week.
I felt energized, not only by the food, but just the energy that was there.
Our principal and our deans and our administrators encouraged us to want to do better.
She was my high school social studies teacher. I co-facilitated a restorative justice program with her at City As, and she's just been someone constant in my life.
It was one period that you got to meet with your coach as like a mentor. My coach was Charles, I will never forget him, and they still have to do their agenda, but majority of the time I remember we'll just sit there and sometimes we'll just talk for like an hour.
My friend from research, Tati, she supported me every step of the way.
Ms. Johnson, who's an English teacher, I would have never graduated with honors if it wasn't for her.
The reason why I kept on taking her classes because I wanted to be friends with her and I wanted to be in the same space with her. She validated me and supported me in a way that I didn't receive ever in my life.
After I left Brooklyn Frontiers, I still kept in touch with a lot of the teachers, even if it was via Facebook, Instagram, emailing.
We're still like connected on LinkedIn in and everything like that, or like they'll check up on me.
Like little things that they did that may seem so small to them probably had a big impact on me.
I did feel more heard and more seen.
That made me realize that there is somebody who loves me unconditionally, who will go to the ends of the earth for me.
It was the first time it was like unconditional support and love for myself.
All right, so before we jump into our findings today, I just really want to thank the alumni who shared their stories in that video and those who shared their stories in our research. We had a lot of transfer school folks also giving us feedback on the research design and helping us make sense of the data, and we appreciate you all. We realized when we were writing this report that hearing from students themselves is going to be more meaningful. So Alicia, Wolcott, and I are going to go through our findings quickly and try and share some highlights from the data. There's more within the report itself, but we want to get to a panel at the end and have some time for questions as well. So our findings, as you heard the first two in that video, are that there's systemic barriers that students face prior to entering transfer schools, and some of these barriers persist after high school. Transfer schools are humanizing. They connect students to post-secondary interests and opportunities. Pathways to success are not necessarily linear or traditional. And we're finding that underserved students are making progress at transfer schools in ways not captured by traditional accountability measures. I have to start out by acknowledging our amazing co-author, Anelfi Maria, who's not speaking today, but you saw in the video there, and she's been an incredible partner in this research. She created the powerful illustrations you'll see in there to help articulate our findings. And perhaps my biggest personal takeaway in our research and from working with Anelfi is not going to show up in citywide data. It's how our systemic barriers make underserved students feel. You know, in several interviews, unprompted, alumni mentioned how they were carrying stigma, but they really shouldn't be, because they needed a new school. At their prior schools, they got the message that the crowded classrooms made them invisible, or police in the building meant they were dangerous, or the lack of supports meant that they weren't good learners. Our alumni remember years later how this made them feel. And they also remember how transfer schools made them feel, which we'll talk about in a minute. So every student, just like every plant in Anelfi's image, needs to be nurtured in different ways. In this image, they're put in rows, they're treated the same way. When we talk about post-secondary planning and career readiness, we need to acknowledge that the way we meet students' needs or we don't meet their needs changes how they think about themselves and what they can do in high school and in the future. But they shouldn't carry any shame when it's clear that the ways in which they're underserved are systematic. How do we know it's systematic? 28% of New York City high school students are 2 years undercredited for their age. That means, so we use the term underserved in our research. The DOE, it's similar to what the DOE described as overage undercredited, but we believe that focusing on overage undercredited, it's not a title that alumni want. It's also focusing on academic deficits when we think there's broader ways that we could be serving students. 10% of students are coming into high school underserved, and this leads to a total of almost 100,000 students. 100,000. So this is a system. And we're finding that Black non-Hispanic males are overrepresented the most out of underserved students, followed by Latinx males. This gender disparity is across racial groups. We realize that DOE data on race and gender does not capture all of the ways identity is important. We saw a lot of LGBTQ students that we talked to in transfer schools, though you'll never see that data in a DOE data set. So what are these systemic barriers that students are telling us about? They talk about a lack of support and flexibility in their traditional schools. And I don't mean, this is a broad definition. It could be mental health or health issues, housing issues, issues that are really beyond the school system, systems across the city that impact how they can make progress in school. So sometimes they have to miss some school, and some of them felt that they were not getting the support to make up lost learning time, or had flexibility to complete things like a practice that we began to offer more and more during the pandemic. Some of them faced the barrier of high stakes testing despite earning credit. And a lot of them mentioned crowded schools, feeling invisible, feeling like there were too many people and there was not enough individual support for them in their schools. And we see the same thing in our DOE data. We see that compared to transfer schools, that the schools they're coming from had larger enrollment in class size. They had fewer social workers and guidance counselors per student. And they were perceived by students based on the DOE survey as less clean, less supportive, and less fair. So there's this alignment between what alumni are telling us and what we're seeing in the citywide data. They also spoke about experiencing racism and homophobia, feeling like conflicts were not really resolved, like they were being policed or suspended, and those were the main tools when a conflict arose. And we saw that prior schools did suspend more students. One student said there's no de-escalation, so there would be fights constantly. And then there's a likely chance of you getting arrested, even if it's just that you have your phone, and there's just fear of being arrested. One student says, in my old school, there were like 3,000 students, probably more. If I miss out any day, I will miss a lot of work. It was probably difficult for the teachers to, give each student like the stuff that they missed, compared to the transfer school where the teachers actually care for each individual student because there were less students and easier for the teachers to help the students out. So our second finding is that transfer schools are humanizing. And you can see from Anelfi's drawing that you have different plants in different sized containers being nurtured in different ways. This finding stems from a quote directly from one of our alumni. My transfer school was, I'm going to say, humanizing, being seen, like literally seen and just appreciated and understood and valued, and all of these other amazing things. You get to be human, you get to be hungry, you get to be confused, you get to be upset, and not just judge based on the numbers you can prove on a test. And there's community there too. When you talk to alumni about their transfer school experiences, what you'll hear more than anything is their relationships with supportive adults. We detail really what that looks like more in the report, but some themes we're finding is they describe supportive adults as supporting them beyond academics, supporting them in ways beyond their job descriptions, holistically. Having behaviors like checking in on them, making sure they're okay, meeting their basic needs, and characteristics like being genuine, welcoming all students, and really believing that they can succeed. We find in the NYC DOE data that this aligns with how transfer school students view teachers compared to their previous schools, as supporting them when they're upset, so catching them up when they're behind. So I'm going to pass it over to who you really want to hear from more, which is our alumni, to introduce our other three findings.
I did a lot of things. I had an internship like cutting glass and making it into art pieces. And then I was painting at the start of the Student Arts League.
I had a cooking job. It was called Cook for Life with Chef Grant, and you just got paid to cook.
At 16 to just paint for 2 days out of the week and be given high school credit for it, which It was like absurd to me that that was allowed.
I fell in love with my activism stuff and writing poetry and getting paid for it. People actually wanting to listen to what I have to say. I still have the support of my school, which was amazing.
I just wanted to jump right into work, and I didn't really want to go back to school. So I just was like, let me just take up a trade and start making money. So they did help connect me with a program called Access VR. Those are the people that helped me get into the technical school. They helped pay.
When I went into Liberation in the beginning, I had a counselor immediately, and he was explaining what was expected from me and what should I expect from him. And I was thinking, in all my schools that I went to, I've never had anybody come up to me and even ask me my name. And here I am, I have somebody who's telling me we're gonna set goals and plans, and you have to at least go to 2 colleges before you can graduate. And don't worry, I'll be there for both the college trips.
Camille, she helped me do my FAFSA and my applications. And she taught me, like, just don't put one college down. She's like, put more than one. Because I was very adamant about this one college I wanted to go to. But she was like, you need some fallback.
And I wondered, okay, I'm in Liberation, I'm in college, but what am I doing? I went back to Liberation, and Miss Leon offered me a job as a school aide. And after having conversations with Miss Leon, I realized that I had this fear of speaking to her. I had to be cautious of what I said because she moved mountains, and I wanted to use that resource carefully.
I initially just went to college to be a social worker and like study psychology, but then like I had an internship at City Yaz, and I was learning about so much of like sociology, and I met like this really cool professor named Naomi Spence, and she took me to Philadelphia, and that was like one of the first times I left the Bronx. And she's like, I know you got into Columbia to be a social worker, but this seems like something you really enjoy. You should do it. That was like all I needed. I was like, okay, took a year off and just applied to grad school, and now I'm at NYU.
All my past teachers, I want them to know, like, thanks to them, I am a teacher now. Because if it wasn't for them and all the love that they gave me, I don't think I would ever been a teacher.
I used to always think it was the title, the salary, the accomplishments, how people viewed you.
I think success is not based on how much money you make. It's about how you feel.
I think is feeling content, feeling satisfied, and feeling that you're growing.
I define success as being whatever you want to be and doing whatever you want to do when you want to do it. It's not always rich, it's just being able to be who you want to be.
And I just think success is, can I help somebody become happy?
For me, I think it's when I feel grounded.
My success was going to college. There's so many people that told me, oh, college is a waste of time. But to me, it wasn't. That's why I'm going for my master's, because I don't think I'm ready to give up school. So success to me is like what you make it and not what others tell you to do with it.
Success in research was us being strong, educated Black people. Black History Month wasn't just in February. It was every single day of the year, every single book we read, stuff that they didn't even teach me in, regular high schools. That's what success looked like to me in research.
I think I'm very successful. I went from sleeping in hallways to I have a bed with a blanket, a whole bunch of pillows I don't use.
Like for me right now, my success is just I can live on my own and have 2 cats. As simple as that is.
Sometimes I do open mic nights. There's a lot of poetry places here, like underground, so I've been going there.
I think where I'm at right now is what I wanted as a child. Having stability, having a family, and being loved.
Success isn't linear. You gotta go through some hard stuff. Like, I've been through a lot of hard stuff.
I graduated at 21 years old. Miss Leon discharged me about 5 or 6 times. When I finally came back the last time, I was 20, and it was September. My birthday was December 26th, so I was turning 21 within that school year. I had 22 credits and maybe like A regions. So any other school wasn't gonna take me. Just off of those numbers alone, I was deemed unsuccessful. It doesn't matter if I learned how to ace mathematics. It matters that I was able to learn throughout my journey to critically think while going back to my school.
I was about to go to college, and I don't know, I just didn't see myself there anymore. I fell in love with my activism stuff and writing poetry and doing stuff that actually made me happy and actually getting paid for it. I started doing that work, and then I got the courage to move out of my grandma's place and got my own place, got a job that actually pays me great. I mean, I've just been doing my thing now.
Let's show them some love in the chat. Wasn't that amazing? Thank you so much again to our alumni. So here's where I'm going to ask you to participate a little bit. And if you're watching a recording, I still want you to participate a little bit. We asked, as you saw in the videos, we asked alumni to describe success, and we heard a lot of different definitions, including degrees and employment, being part of a community, giving back, having peace, getting through difficult stuff. And we think it's important when we think about what schools do and how we define their success, and when accountability systems are judging schools, that we consider more than just what's easy to measure, and we think about what students and families really want to accomplish. So here's a little taste of that, and I'm going to ask you in the chat if you'd like to chime in, or at home on a piece of paper. How would our schools look differently if we mapped our work onto our alumni's definition of success? So I'll give you a minute or two to think about that. Less adultism, I like that. We'd look at employment, gainful employment, the same as if they went to college. We make schools more humanizing. I'm not capturing all this wonderful stuff. Yeah. We'd have more purpose. We'd focus on the goals and dreams of students, and they'd feel more holistic. Great. More joy. Things would be more relevant. Hey, Michael, Diona. All right. I'm going to pass it back to Alicia, who will take us through some of the data on the rest of our findings, but feel free to keep engaging in the chat. That's why we didn't make it a webinar format, so we could hear from you.
Thanks, Allie. So we've just been spending some time trying to show that success is more than a high school diploma, but we know that the opportunities a diploma opens for our students and want all students to graduate. Transfer schools are sometimes punished for their graduation rates, particularly when they're compared to traditional schools. We found that if we looked at all the students across the city who didn't graduate within that 4-year benchmark for accountability, 51% of the students who found their way to transfer schools ultimately graduated, compared to just 25% of those who stayed at traditional high schools. Now, some might say 51% is still really low, and certainly transfer school educators work every day to raise that. But think about it, for every student on a non-4-year trajectory who fights their way to a diploma in a traditional school, transfer schools are graduating 2. And as we've named, that doesn't capture all the other growth and accomplishments. Transfer schools graduate higher rates of underserved students in general, but those gains don't necessarily show up in 4 years. Many of those students are still enrolled, and at 6 years in particular, we see more of the value students, transfer schools add. Transfer schools have higher 6-year grad rates for underserved students with marginalized identities, particularly Black, Latinx, or Indigenous students, multi-language learners, and students identified with an IEP. One interesting thing we found was that underserved students entering their 2nd year of high school had almost triple the 6-year graduation rate if they made it to a transfer school. And we're wondering if that's an important moment for making enrollment decisions. Our early research in other cities seems to suggest that what's happening in New York City transfer schools is certainly something to celebrate. We see success on all kinds. We see success of all kinds on different timelines. Here are 4 students. They all graduated with a Regents diploma. One left school and re-engaged years later. One went to multiple alternative settings. One went to multiple traditional settings. Now, none of these graduates would count in a school's 4-year or 6-year graduation rate. Acknowledging that we want all students to graduate, we also spoke to students who didn't graduate. Can there be success if you don't hit that key milestone? Here's what one alum said. Is it sad that I didn't get to finish? Yeah, but did something good come out of it? I will say yes. I'm most proud of the career choices that I've made since high school, going into an organizer position, my personal life outside of work, to doing modeling, to being in ballroom, to being a voguer. Yeah, so just doing all these creative things on the outside that I love to do as well. It's just, I'm proud of it because it's like I'm getting their recognition. I'm glad to finally get the recognition I deserve. I'm just happy to not be overlooked anymore, if that makes sense. We asked alumni about how their experiences in high school connected to what they were doing now. Many alumni spoke about internships, how they sparked interests and helped them figure out what they wanted to study, or how they were directly connected to work, either by continuing their internship or building their resume enough that they could get a better position right out of high school. College goers said that some aspects of their transfer school classes were helpful in getting them ready, like longer classes, research projects, using spreadsheets. Some of them preferred the experiential learning in their transfer school to the textbooky work that they had in college courses. And we can't generalize this, but the students we interviewed seemed to have a strong lean towards helping professions, teachers, community organizers, working with youth. Some of them credit their teachers or opportunities in high school, like being a restorative justice mediator. From the broader citywide data set, we found students perceived transfer school instruction as more relevant to their everyday life experiences compared to those prior schools. And transfer schools that had higher grad rates after 4 years offered significantly more internships per student than those transfer schools that didn't. Unfortunately, we weren't able to include post-secondary enrollment data in our research because the way the DOE typically tracks this data leaves out a large segment of the students in our cohort. We think that our current state accountability measures are missing a lot of ways in which students and schools grow. We have to consider what students and alumni are saying about their schools to figure out how to improve them. A year ago, Eskolta worked with stakeholders to put together an ethical framework for alternative accountability that we will keep updating as we continue to learn. We'll share it in the chat now. Some of the recommendations include incorporating student and family feedback, looking at growth rather than proficiency, and relying less on high stakes exams and short-term graduate outcomes. Savannah, maybe can you pop the ethical framework in the chat? Awesome. And while she's doing that, I'm going to hand it over to Makila to share some of the recommendations out of the report itself.
Thank you, Alicia. So there are a range of takeaways from this work. After debriefing our findings with alumni and educators, we've settled on a few recommendations for educators and for policymakers. Many of these do overlap, but we're going to call them out all the same here today. I think the first is we need caring and affirming schools that routinely listen to students, that have trauma-informed practices, that are sized right so that staff have the opportunity to really offer individualized support. Students need to feel safe, not policed. We need real restorative justice and adults who are invested in affirming race, gender, and sexual identities. We need to formalize and pay for supports after high school. A few more, I think, on the next slide. Similar to what Alicia just shared, we have some ideas for how to hold alternative schools accountable in ethical, fair, and transparent ways, and you'll see that in our ethical framework. Flexibility is something that can be a way of showing students who learn in another way that we care. Therefore, the flexibility that has been afforded students during the pandemic is something that should not disappear. And finally, we have not addressed the challenge of older students who need to support themselves or others financially. Alumni say they want help navigating their finances. So let's make sure older students don't have to make the choice between meeting their basic needs and remaining in school.
Thank you. All right, now we're going to move on to the fun part, our panel discussion for today. Unfortunately, Jada can't make it. She's facing an emergency right now, but we still have an awesome group. First, I'll introduce my co-moderator, Evin Orfila, the one and only. He's an alumni from Liberation Diploma Plus and also an advocate counselor. We have Nekisha Smith. And we're not going to spotlight a panel because of the Zoom format, but so you'll see them pop up as they speak. We have Nekisha Smith. Thanks for coming. She is a director at South Brooklyn Community High School, working for Good Shepherd Services. She is also an alumni of West Brooklyn Community High School. We have Dr. Allison Farrington, the founding principal at Research and Service High School, located in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. She's renowned for her epic graduation ceremonies. And if you saw the video where they described the nice woman in the hallway, that is Dr. Farrington. Thanks for being with us. And then lastly, we have Robert Reyes, who is an alumni from Jill Chaifetz High School. He graduated in 2018, and after taking a short break from school after high school, he enrolled in community college to pursue nursing and is now enrolled in the nursing program at Medgar Evers College. So thank you all so much for being with us today. I'm going to ask Robert to help us kick it off. Should I stop sharing my screen? Let's do that. We can see each other if you'd like to. All right, so Robert, hey, how are you?
Hello, good afternoon. How are you?
Thanks for being here.
No problem.
You know, something we're learning from our research is that success and the road to it looks different for different students. Can you tell us what success looks like for you? And if there's any particular high school experiences that you can connect to that success?
Yes, success. It means to be able to have an impact on other people's lives in a positive way. And just as my teachers back in Jill Chaifetz had an impact on my life, Kim, Michael, Miss Francois, Helen, Doug, the list goes on. And just to be able to do what they did would be a blessing, which is impact and motivate people.
Is that what you're up to right now?
Yes, yes.
And so now you're in a nursing program at Medgar Evers, right?
Correct. This is my first semester at Medgar Evers, and I honestly did not think I would be here. And Jill Chaifetz definitely played a big part in that. It helped me realize that there's more and that I can do anything, and it helped me a lot.
Great. I think you told me about some of your teachers that stood out to you as supporting you in high school. Do you want to shout any of them out or tell us what was memorable about that?
Yeah, so starting off with Kim Cummings, she was my history teacher. And something about her that I appreciate to this day was that she actually prepared me for college. She put me in the mindset of submitting some assignments weekly, and it just really helped me a lot. And she was like one of the main teachers that I'm super thankful. I'm thankful for all teachers, but she's one of them that I'm very grateful for. Doug, I love Doug. He was my science teacher, and he would just when you would walk in class, you wouldn't feel that pressure in the sense coming from a superior, but if not, that your friend that would motivate you and pat you on the back and motivate you to keep on going forward. And Helen, she was my elective teacher for poetry. I love her. She really helped me a lot, helped me embrace who I was, if that makes sense. And I appreciate her a lot.
Yeah, we have some of them here. Shout out.
Thank you. We love you too. Thank you. Yeah,
and
so those are my
in?
sure.
Thank you, Robert. We do appreciate it. It's very meaningful. The next question I want to direct to Nekisha and Allison. It's a two-part question. So I'm going to say the first part and the second part, and then you guys just decide how you guys want to answer it. So the first part is, how have you seen the pandemic shift the barriers students face in high school and in their post-secondary transitions? And then the second part to that is, what do they need from their schools right now?
Hey everybody, Dr. Farrington here. Thanks for having me. What we found is that the kids really wanted to be in school. The kids really came back in droves. They ran back. They were excited to be back. They were excited to be around people who loved them, because them being locked down with maybe people who are abusing them, or them being locked down maybe without food, them being locked down without the access to the love in which transfer schools provide. The kids really wanted to be here. What we also found, even before the pandemic, is the kids would commit what I call educational suicide. When it was time for them to when it was close to them, time for them to graduate, they would not show up to that last Regents exam, or they would fail a class, or not come to school the last 2 weeks of the trimester, so they wouldn't earn the credits. So the system that we put in place to mitigate that is we actually hired what we call our aftercare specialist. And this person works with the kids from their last year in high school throughout the first 2 years in which they graduate. So because we had that in place already, the kids transition into their post-secondary opportunities pretty seamlessly.
Just to add to what Dr. Farrington said, with the academic suicide, that is something that we've noticed a lot of. Our students will get into that last term and just walk the halls, not go to class, not want to do what they needed to do, only because they were worried about what was out there afterwards. And, you know, another thing that we did to mitigate that was exposure, letting them go out, let them try different things. Our internships, allowing them to, in their classes, doing through work-based learning, allowing them an opportunity to try out different things. We brought in more modern things, podcasting, taking videos, editing videos, have them doing more hands-on trainings so they can see how that'll correlate to the real world. Most of our students were forced into the job field very quickly, so their idea of what was to happen after high school, which would have been college, now turned into I have to work, I have to support my family. Some of our kids came back with a family. So, their goals have shifted, and we have to shift with it. While, we want them to go to college or whatever we may have wanted, or whatever the plan might have been, we had to shift to adjust to what they needed at the time. And us just having the ability to speak one-on-one with our students to get that information out of them allowed us to see certain things and just navigate them to where they needed to be.
I think you've covered some of this already, but we heard in our research, or we saw from Alicia's slide, that transfer schools are having more success graduating underserved students. We heard about humanizing environments, supportive adults, internship opportunities. Why do you think transfer schools are having more success graduating underserved students? And are there specific practices or strategies you can point to?
So I think transfer schools see more success because we have the perfect marriage of love and instruction. To be a teacher in a transfer school, you must differentiate your instruction on levels unseen before. Not only are you looking at a kid's learning style, you're taking into account the emotional intelligence, you're taking into account that these kids, I have students from 95 different high schools that come at different parts of the year, that come different days of the week. So the teachers in transfer schools have to be strong instructionalists in order to cater to the needs of these young people academically, but then have to be strong emotionally in order to cater to the students as well, because they walk in with an array of problems because the systems around them have failed them. They didn't fail, the systems connected to them have failed them. The medical institution, the criminal institution, other schools, housing, everything has failed them. So we have to have the perfect marriage of instruction in love in transfer schools and making sure that what we do is culturally relevant, The overwhelming majority of my school is African-American, about 50-50, male and female, but making sure that they see themselves when they walk into the school building, making sure that they understand that this is a cultural institution. This is their home, it's their living room. The kids often tell us that it feels like they're learning on their couch because that's the environment that we try to create for them, because in many cases, their home life may be tumultuous. So I don't want them to come in with the same anxiety that they have outside of the school building. They understand when they walk into this black and yellow, the whole world goes away, at least for those couple of hours that they're with us. And we try to just develop the skills that they're going to need to cope with the world once they leave us.
In my opinion, it's just that simple transfer school model. Large schools don't have the opportunities to give students that one-to-one care. With the CBOs alongside the transfer schools, we have our advocate counselors. We can guarantee that for every one student that comes in, there's 3 people attached to them. It can be an advocate counselor, a JIC, a job and internship coordinator, or a career and access counselor. It can be a AC, which is guaranteed to each student. Then you may have a teacher and a director who just has a great relationship with them. We are able to cover that one student with love from different areas. We also create that nurturing environment. Like Dr. Farrington has said, the students can walk in and they feel comfortable letting you know, hey, I'm having a rough day today. I need a minute, and they will not be penalized for it. Also, student voice. I had a student come up to me just the other day and say, ma'am, you know, he was brand new too. He walked in and he said, I wanted to know if we'd be able to do like acting classes or something like that. I said, it's so crazy that you said that. We just acted out a play in this trimester that just ended before. So he was like, really? So now I'm like, you should join student government. You know, we're able to create the community based off of what our students' needs are. And you can't really get that in basic high school because they just don't have the capacity. There's no way for that 3,000 student and 6 guidance counselors for everyone to have a relationship, but you can almost guarantee that every student that comes in is able to have a relationship with someone. We're able to connect them to resources. We're able to hear their story and provide some form of support that'll help them get to the next level.
Thank you. That was beautifully spoken from both of you guys. This next question I want to direct to all panelists. So we tried very carefully to be intentional with the language in the report, because it's easy to say that students are falling behind, but often at times we get the image that students are falling. It's their actions and their failures that we see in our mind. We heard alternative students characterized as struggling, falling, failing, and even lacking motivation. And we heard from them the stigma that they feel from it. How do you guys respond to this description?
I think that it's unfair that pejorative labels are put on young people. Many of them walk into schools carrying a burden that should not be theirs. But where data is captured for most people, young people, is in school. So we don't think about the fact that they're walking in hungry. We don't think about the fact that they're walking in broken. We don't think about the fact that they're carrying burdens that they shouldn't have to carry. But where the behaviors may manifest themselves at is in schools. So if schools don't have a quality program to address all of the needs that young people have, unfortunately, they'll be considered failing. But it's not the kid that failed or fell. It's the systems connected to the children. And we have to correct those systems, because the data that shows or that says a kid fails is connected to schools, and it's not fair. Those pejorative terms should not be thrown on children. So you have to create environments and celebrate every single win that a kid has when they come to school. Celebrate the fact that they just simply walked in the door by simply saying, good morning, baby, how are you? I see you. Everything all right? I love you. Put their pictures up all over the school. It's their home. It's their community. If you come to my home, I would expect that you would expect pictures of my children up in my living room. This is their living room. This is their place. Break bread with kids, have food with them, laugh, joke, run through the hallway, sing, dance, allow them to be children. Because that's the other thing about transfer schools. We call them young adults. That's not even a label that should be given to them yet either. They're children. Many of them have not had an adequate childhood. They're thrown into certain circumstances where they're taking care of younger brothers. A kid in the 9th grade shouldn't have to decide if he can get to school on time or does he have to bring his little brother to school on time first. They take on all of these other responsibilities outside of just simply being children. So I call them my babies. I will always call them my babies. These are my children. And I treat them like that, but then also got to raise them up at the exact same time too. So we figured out how do you give them a childhood and an adulthood at the exact same time? Because the kids didn't fail, the system failed the kids.
Rob or Nekisha, do you want to respond to that way we often hear transfer school students spoken of?
As a former transfer school student myself, definitely familiar with some of those terms. And it did take a transfer school setting to help me recognize that I'm not a failure. I made some mistakes. Everything is okay. I'm just as smart as the other kid with a second opportunity. So similar to what Dr. Farrington said, I just feel that if we continue to nurture, create those environments and have students feel loved, welcome, supported, give them the opportunity to let go and unpack the traumas that they come with and just show them how to deal with it differently. I see that earlier we spoke about suspensions and de-escalations and those not being opportunities for them. Having that opportunity, because you'll have a student come in who's used to being suspended, so they'll continue to act in that manner because they assume that suspension is going to be the next step. Instead of, no, we're going to sit down, we're going to talk about this, we're going to bring the other party in, because maybe you're reacting to something based off of your past, but we want to change your thinking. So just allowing those opportunities and not speaking to them in the same manner that they're used to being spoken to in. That one student that was used to being suspended, we're not going to suspend you. We're going to talk to you. We're going to have you do some community service. We're going to treat situations differently so that you can take away those stigmas. So when they walk away, they don't feel like that. Because when I graduated, I felt like a scholar. And when I got there, I didn't feel that way. So, just the way how you unpack things and how things can be different. And just for me as a director, I always remember what it was like for me to come into a transfer school. So for each student that walks in, the first any student who comes in on the first day or the first week or the second week, I want to make sure I know who they are, because I remember how important it was for me to identify adults in the building and be able to walk up to them and have a conversation with them. I have an open door policy. Everyone walks in my door. They don't even knock anymore. They just walk in and they get so comfortable with that, where they can do that. But I just think if we continue to do the work that we do, nobody can be looked at as a failure.
Thank you. That was amazing. Before we have a few more questions, I just want to touch on this question as a former alumni from an alternative high school and working in that same alternative high school. I think for some reason, we are in a system that has normalized this expectation of perfection. And I think that we have to reflect on who we are as individuals. Are we meeting that standard ourselves? Can we be perfect? And we have to come to the realization that we can't. And in doing so, we have to reflect that to our students. It's okay to fail. There is no shame in failure. Failure is a place to be vulnerable, to learn. Growth comes from failure. So if we're striving our students to be perfect, where is there room for them to grow? Where is there room for them to reflect? How do they find alternative ways like their school to teach others to be great? As Dr. Farrington mentioned, celebrate the wins. That comes with, you might have failed yesterday, but you woke up today, that's a win. Let's put that on the record. When you come in our building, if you fail math, we'll come to the office, we can find a way to do it again. We celebrate a win for finding an alternative method to reach the goal that you want. So when we look at the words motivation, how about we shift it to dedication and devotion? Because we often as humans don't wake up motivated every day. So how do we push through that why? How do we get to what's our why for doing what we do? Because it's not motivation most of the time. It's the end result. It's who we're doing it for. So when we look at the word lacking motivation, shift the mindset to dedication and devotion for the kids, for our babies, so they can see us, so they can become us or better than us. And I just want to pass it back to Ali. Thank you.
No, you can't say all that and then pass it back to Allie. Uh, Rob, I want to give you a chance to share anything on your mind around, we didn't talk about your high school experience before getting to a transfer school. Are there any barriers that you think we need to do a better job confronting, so that students don't even need transfer schools? I mean, they will.
Thank you. Yes, it's funny. While one of the sisters were talking about how she has the open door policy, I remembered when I was back in Chaifetz, they also had that policy. And I remember once back in my old high school, I had walked into class late, and I tried to talk to the teacher how I can catch up, and her response was, "I don't want to talk to you. Get out." And back in Chaifetz, when I would come late and I would try to catch up, I would just see the difference in which they would be just with their arms open, willing to help. And that's just one example there that made me feel that, wow, that this is doable. What seemed impossible at the time, which was finishing high school, I saw as possible. And something that perhaps the New York City public high schools can do is making it more humanizing rather than having like the sense of being superior over the students. My transfer school, they allowed us to call teachers by their first names, and they actually preferred it. Back in my public school, you had to call them by their last name. And you just kind of sense the difference there, that you would see them more as friends in transfer schools, and in public schools more as my boss, my superior. And that could be a bit distracting sometimes.
Yeah.
So that would be my intake on what public schools can do better, just making it more humanizing, allowing students to feel that they can be themselves and view their teachers as someone that they can confide in the sense help them meet their academic goals.
Yeah, thank you. It is amazing how many alumni mentioned in interviews the first name thing, or getting to know teachers on this personal basis beyond feeling like they're an authority figure. There was a mutual respect, they felt like. So before we open it up for some questions, I just want to end on this question. We made a lot of recommendations in the report. I think there could be more. So to our panelists, if there was one thing you want educators and policymakers to really hear from the discussion today and from the research, what is it?
I think that transfer school principals have to be extremely intentional, and all too often when policy is created, it's done without transfer schools in mind. So we have to become reactionary too, right? We have to shift and pivot so quickly when policy rolls out, because it's not I don't think that it's generated with transfer schools in mind and the type of children it is we service in mind. So a major recommendation, I think, for me would be to have more people spend time in transfer schools. Traditional principals need to walk into these hallways in order to understand, and traditional teachers need to walk into these hallways and classrooms in order to understand the work. Because in every single school, there's a transfer school kid sitting there, right? Do the work so, and I'm not trying to get myself out of a job, but do the work so that transfer schools don't need to exist. This is the experience that every kid should get. Every single kid should get this experience. And if traditional schools had the experiences or created the experiences that we do, the entire school system will be much better. Let transfer schools lead the model. Let transfer schools lead the way, because the answers are in this room. I promise you that.
I just want to add that creating a community can do wonders. Allowing a student to feel like they're home and that they fit in can do wonders. So while we understand that the capacity may be huge, but if we look at the student leaders in the leaders, the adult leaders in the building and how the teachers show up and how the principal and the administration shows up and create a team that surrounds each student, I can almost guarantee the numbers would shift, because like the students, like they were saying in the videos prior, they were unseen. You couldn't see them. You couldn't identify a student if it wasn't just for their name, or you knew their name, but you didn't know their faces. If you can put a name to the face and create a community for those students in those major schools, I believe it'll shift completely. If you look at the transfer school model and how we do that 3-to-1, 4-to-1, 6-to-1, it will make a major difference.
Yeah, I also just want to add on, because I think it's very important as educators just to be mindful that the students that you guys are embracing may literally be a reflection of who you are and what type of person are you. Because the data even indicates it, the students who graduate from alternative schools usually go back into fields that give back to communities. They go into teaching, education, nonprofits, fields in which they saw firsthand that's effective and works, that's meaningful. So when policymakers create curriculums or structures around nonprofits, is it inclusive and is it meaningful? Because it's literally the definition of changing a life and changing a generation. Thank you.
Yes, I feel that some policymakers should definitely take heavy consideration into the influence that trans schools have, and make it more student orientated, and so that students can feel more comfortable with their teachers. And I believe that transfer schools have a lot of help to offer on these policies that are passed. So I would like for the lawmakers and policymakers to take a look at transfer schools and get our help, because the statistics, they show it, how much students graduate. Thank you.
Thanks so much to our panel. I'm going to let you hang out and see if there's any questions, or questions also about the research that we shared earlier in the presentation. We have about a few minutes for that. We will share the slides and a recording on the website after this. Billy said, what are some creative ways you are finding to keep teachers motivated and encouraged on this journey?
Would it be fine if I gave my input onto that?
Sure.
From a student's perspective, we can go back and thank our teachers for the amazing job that they did. It's something that they can use, and it's refreshing, because being a teacher is not an easy job, and that's why I respect all the teachers. So just appreciating their hard work that goes unnoticed a lot of times, like staying after school extra hours to help out that one student that didn't get a certain topic, because I was that student a bunch of times. Kimberly, Doug, they can tell you. So that's something that would really help a
lot. This year, I did a lot of work with my staff around mindfulness and helping them not live vicariously through students' pain, right? Because the shoulders that the students lean on are the staff, and sometimes the burden can get heavy. So I did a lot of work with bringing in consultants to work with my staff around mindfulness, making sure that they're okay. I did a lot of work this year helping my teachers with financial literacy for themselves. A lot of our professional development was really grounded in who the teacher is, because they're great instructionalists. And I need them to continue to want to serve this population, because it is daunting. It is difficult. Being in transfer school in Bed-Stuy, my kids coming from 4 out of the 5 boroughs, traveling through I got kids shot on the way to school. You know, we lost a couple of students this year. It is difficult to ask teachers to come in and love on these kids every day, not knowing if they're going to lose one of them, because we do have high concentrations of kids getting shot. We hate when the weather gets warm here, because we just never know what crazy email we're going to get from NYPD. So keeping them motivated is also just walking around and letting them know I love you too and I see you. You know, during the pandemic, when we were locked down, I did have students make quick videos and surprise teachers with videos from the students in their emails. And it made them feel really good. Just teachers know, y'all see me in this room, I'm never in this office. I have the most open door policy ever. My desk is literally in the middle of the hallway. People were coming by, and I'm only in here today because when the meeting started, it was dismissal for us, so I couldn't be in the hallway for this link. I scared a couple of people sitting in here when they came to open up the door to get something out the refrigerator because they know I'm never in here. So when I'm not around in the hallway, people are like, what's going on? You know, but I walk into the teacher's classroom every day, just say good. I walk down the halls a couple of times, just say, listen, y'all all right? Everything good? Everything okay? I ask them about their children and their families and their pets, just to let them know I see you too. I know that you're human. And the beautiful thing is they do it to me as well. They ask about my children. You know, they make sure that I'm okay. They ask me, did you eat today? You need anything from the store? You know, so the family extension is not just to the kids, it's to the entire community.
I'm sorry we scared your students here, bringing you into the room today. I want to end on this question that Brittany shared. We might not get to all of it, Brittany, so let me just do the first part. And I invite anyone to answer this is, you know, how can we begin / continue the work so that we can bring the amazingness of transfer schools to all of the schools? Is there anything we can do now to begin that legwork of change?
So Britt, I think with that question, simple things can be done, right? I don't know how your principal may feel about this, but record the dope things that are happening and throw them on social media. Tag the chancellor. Tag your superintendent. That's free. That's 5 seconds. Record those student anecdotals, those teacher anecdotals, record kids all excited, you know, because they, you know, got an A on their exam or whatever. Record kids just sitting down and being children in the hallway or being children in the cafeteria. Record them laughing and joking and playing and learning and post it. Because no one will ever, my school is located inside of the historic Boys and Girls High School. The stigma attached to this building, Lord have mercy, no matter what it is we do inside, if it's not flipped outside, people won't believe that transfer school kids or that kids in this community can. So I do things like, we have in my introduction, our graduation ceremonies are over the top. And guess where they take place? Outside. We do a whole parade around the building in cap and gowns because I need the community to see that these children can. We do a whole block party. I shut down Schenectady Avenue between Fulton and Atlantic. And we have our graduation outside because the world does not know, one, that we exist. Two, in this community, they don't believe that this building offers proper learning to young people. So I got to show them that we can. Our science fair was outside today. Outside, not in the classroom. We already know the dopeness that kids are doing. The world needs to see that they're doing dope things and just tag everybody on it. That's free stuff.
Thank you so much. I think that is important and imperative just to remind, because there's this stigma with isolating and concealing transfer schools. So I just want to recap a few things and then we'll pass it off for closing remarks. I want to just touch on what Dr. Farrington mentioned. I think we have to, as she mentioned, bring humanity into our transfer schools and publicize it. A great quote that I see from Ms. Leon's office every day is, I can walk on water, but only when it freezes. And to us in transfer schools, we are capable of our wildest dreams, but we are still human. we're still grounded by what nature can stop us from achieving. But it doesn't stop us from achieving our goals, from pushing, from dedicating. And as Dr. Farrington mentioned, I think it's important for us to remember that we actually have to be the change that we wish to see. It doesn't start from policymakers, it doesn't start from the system, it starts from the teachers and educators inside the schools first. Because you can only shake up the world when you shake up the culture. So with that being said, I want to pass it back to Ms. Myers for closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just want to thank all of our panelists, our alumni who shared their stories with us this afternoon. We're committed to continuing to uplift these stories, to share them and to integrate them into the work that we're doing with schools and with policymakers. Please continue to spread the videos and to share the report with your communities. We at Eskolta are committed to growing our research to better understand underserved students and the ways we can best serve them. So we look forward to continuing this conversation. My email is on the screen. Please reach out and let's connect. We're looking forward to the thought partnership that comes with this very important work. We'll share today's presentation on our website in the next few days. We'd really appreciate you sharing your thoughts and feedback with us this afternoon. We'll just throw a quick survey in the chat if it's not already there. Thank you so much for being with us. I know the weather is nice, it's sunny, and we're just happy that you came and spent the past hour with us. Thank you so much and enjoy your evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, and guys, in case nobody told you today, I think you guys are amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Take care, y'all.
Take care. Thank you.
You're welcome.